All right.
We're going?
Started. Yes.
Yep, all right. This is the Enfield Planning Board. Today is July, or not July, don't I wish it July. Today is January 15th, 2025. This is our kickoff meeting for this year. Members present from my left.
Eric Russell.
Dan Kiley.
I'm David Fract.
Bill Vermeer. Tim Jennings.
Kirk Othaus.
Staff.
Rob Taylor.
Whitney Banker, also alternate.
Okay.
And
And
Bill Griffin.
Bill
Is
Griffin,
Bill-
alternate.
Okay, is Linda here?
Nope.
Or anywhere?
Nope.
Okay, welcome, Bill. First order of meeting, let's see, the call to order, no hearings, no conceptuals. And now we get into the zoning amendments. For those of you who are not aware, each year the planning board proposes 3 or 4 different amendments to our zoning regulations. Some of them are to solve problems that we have seen during our work. Some of them are just to make Enfield what we hope will be a better town. So we have a bunch this year, and the first one is on accessory dwelling units. Can you put that on the screen, Rob?
Yep, here it comes. And it's shared too for the people online.
Yeah, share it, please.
There we go.
So an accessory dwelling unit, the purpose and intent is to address the need and desire for more diverse, independent, and affordable housing. The units will improve the inventory of smaller housing without significantly altering the rural character of the community. Definition of an ADU. A residential living unit that is within, attached to, or detached from a single-family dwelling and that provides independent living facilities for 1 or more persons, including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation on the same parcel of land as the principal dwelling unit it accompanies. An ADU may contain no more than 1,200 square feet of conditioned space as further defined in RSA 674:71 to 73 and below. Specifically, not more than 2 accessory dwelling units may be created on a single lot in all zoning districts in which single-family homes are allowed by right. And in Enfield, that includes the entire town. You can put single-family homes anywhere. Accessory dwelling units may be internal to the principal structure or attached to the principal dwelling, and up to 1 of the ADUs may be detached from the principal dwelling. 3 dwelling units within the same structure are subject to regulation as a multifamily dwelling. On lots not served by town sewer, the property owner shall obtain DES, which is Department of Environmental Services, thank you, approval for a properly sized on-site sewage disposal system prior to the issuance of a building permit. If a new system is required, it must be installed prior to occupancy. The accessory dwelling unit and main dwelling unit are exempt from district acreage density requirements. Where a new structure is required for an ADU, district setback requirements shall be observed. All ADUs must be built to the same building code in effect at the time the ADU is installed, as would be required for a structure to replace in kind the principal single-family home. And adding to the definition section of our zoning regulations is a new definition for conditioned space. specifically an area, room, or space that is enclosed within the building thermal envelope and that is directly or indirectly heated or cooled. Spaces are indirectly heated or cooled where they communicate through openings with conditioned spaces, where they are separated from conditioned spaces by uninsulated walls, floors, or ceilings, or where they contain uninsulated ducts, piping, or other sources of heating or cooling. So that is the entirety of the proposed amendment. And
I would just add too, I think there was a couple things out there today bouncing around. You may have seen them.
Right,
We already currently allow 2 ADUs. That's already in our regs. So that's not a change. We already do allow up to one of them to be detached. That's already currently in our regs. So there was a little bit of confusion, I think, on that. So just.
Well, I think we should further highlight any change at all from the existing ordinance to, that's proposed here.
yeah,
Summarize that.
right,
yeah,
the 1,200 square feet should be highlighted, because that is going up from what it is now.
And
Right.
explain why we. want to
Right,
do
well, that'll be in, yeah, put that in the,
Well,
narrative.
we got
That'll be in
public
the
here. We
narrative.
need to explain
Right.
that.
okay. Do you want to explain that, Tim?
Phil wrote down.
Pass the button. Phil's gonna pass it to me and Dan will wind up explaining it.
Well, we increased it from 800 to 1,200 because there are families that want to keep their children on their lot with them. And 800 square feet wasn't going to be big enough for that type situation. They wanted to be able to have space for 3 bedrooms if they wanted to. And 800 wouldn't justify or wouldn't allow that. So in order to keep families together and make housing affordable for families that want to keep their children in town, we decided to expand the space a little larger so they could have 2 bathrooms and 3 bedrooms in the ADU. That's kind of the thought process behind that. That's when we came up with 1,200 square feet as being able to do that.
If somebody wants to go smaller, they can go smaller.
And if they want to build a 500, they can do a 500. We just want a mother-in-law apartment. Go 500 or smaller. And right now we've got 500, square foot apartments going for 2,400 a month. So if you want to generate some revenue on your property, hello, do that too. Help pay your water bill and mortgage.
There's the issue of sewer.
Right.
Yeah, the sewer, the state said, the state law stipulates that you connect to your regular sewer, and to your septic, and if you can hook all this extra bedrooms to that septic, and as long as there's no problems, you can get by with that. Well, we don't want to take that risk in this town with a lake and natural resources and water close by to a lot of these places. So we put the additional stipulation in that we want to have a certified septic that can handle the additional load on that septic. Because a lot of times the septic can break, and you just don't know it until you start smelling stuff. And then by that time, you're polluting the streams and the lakes in the town. We've got pretty heavy guidance in our master plan that we want to take care of our water in this town. So that's why we put that additional stipulation in for having a septic in place if you're gonna add an extra bedrooms in your lot.
So that goes above and beyond the state requirement, but, we as a board thought that was a really good thing to put in, to protect our lakes. Anything else?
right now, the state reg says you have to have a design, but it never says you have to put it in. So we're saying, yeah, you gotta put it in. If you've got 5 bedrooms and you've got a design for 5 bedrooms, then you've got to put in a system for 5 bedrooms. You can't just have a design for 5 bedrooms.
Then one last item on here was the, ADUs must be built to the same building code as the principal dwelling, and the reason for that was, it certainly would be fairly easy to have in a neighborhood of let's say some 19th century homes down the street that a neighbor would put an ADU in and use a manufactured home, a trailer, a single wide, slip one in, there you go. Well, the requirement here is that that ADU has to be built to the same building code as the building that it's being attached or detached from, which means that a mobile home would not meet that code requirement.
Unless you have a mobile home on the lot already, you can put a second mobile home in, you could do that.
Right.
But we don't want mobile homes showing up willy-nilly in the nicer parts of town.
And there are many, Shed Street isn't a good example where there are several mobile homes on that street. So, you know, that certainly would be out of place to have another one dropped in as an ADU. Whereas a place like Stevens Street, that really would be out of place. So that's the reason for that section.
Basically trying to keep the character of the neighborhoods as they exist, which we've heard is something that people would like to see us do. So that's why it's in there. Anything else, Tim or Phil?
I think all the other wording changes were really just more administrative, just trying to be consistent, that sort of thing. That what we just highlighted is the bulk really of the changes.
Yeah, we put the conditioned space in there because, how do you define the 1,200 square feet? You measure around the outside for 1,200 square, you measure around the inside for 1,200 square feet. So we said 1,200 square feet of conditioned space, and that's clearly defined, so that's what you got to go with. Before it was kind of, you didn't know what it was.
And the reason we put that in is because if somebody has a barn or a carriage house that has a footprint of more than 1,200 square feet, and they want to put an ADU on the second floor, they couldn't do it if you're measuring the exterior footprint. But by calling it conditioned space, you can construct a wall, partition, and 1,200 feet of conditioned living space, and then maybe you've got 400 or 500 square feet of cold storage, which is not conditioned space. So that we think will allow a lot more people who have barns or carriage houses to be able to convert them to ADUs and still stay within the bounds of the law. So I will now open the hearing up to questions or comments from the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? Sharon?
I have a question about number 4. Could you look at that and explain that to me, please?
Let me put my glasses on.
State law.
Yeah, A, it is state law, and B, what that means is that, if our zoning reg says 1 dwelling unit per half acre in R1, where there's sewer, and we add another dwelling unit, which is what an ADU is, that would put that property out of compliance. Because we're putting in 2 ADUs on a lot that has 1. So what this number 4 does is say that if you're putting in an ADU, the requirements for that particular zoning district do not have to be observed. But again, it's limited to 1,200 square feet. And you've got to have adequate sewers provided.
And you gotta meet all the
You
setbacks.
have to be the
And the setbacks too, right? Go ahead, Sharon.
I guess. And then I think about how a developer might interpret these and how the town may some things may happen that people don't anticipate. So are you suggesting that, I know I live in residential one, and I know it's, if I'm correct, it's quarter acre zone, is that right?
Mhm.
If you're on top
If
of it.
you're on sewer, town sewer.
So how would this change? If I had I have 3/4 of an acre, but if my neighbor who has a half an acre maybe, because some of the lots are small, wants to put in what, up to how many ADUs can my neighbor put in?
Two.
Two. One can be outside of, detached from his building. Is he limited to that on that half acre, his house? And an ADU in his house plus an ADU in his yard? And maybe there's no yard and the setback is what, only 15 feet from my border?
Well, if there's no yard, he can't observe the setback and therefore would not be able to do it.
So is that correct that the setback is 15 feet?
In your particular R1, yes, the side setback.
20 to the street, 15 to the sidewalks.
Right.
Just thinking things could get pretty crazy.
Can you tell me which RSA that is coming, because I always confused about that too, and I had some questions on the wording, how that's worded, because I'm not. Because I'm just looked at,
674.
yeah, which line? Because I'm looking at 674:73, detached accessory dwelling units. A municipality is not required to, but may permit detached accessory dwelling units. Detached accessory dwelling units shall comply with the requirements of in any municipal ordinances or regulations adopted pursuant to RSA 67472. If a municipality allows detached accessory dwelling units, it may require an increased lot size. So that's,
To May.
It's a may,
It's
it's
a
not,
may, but this
it's
is,
not a
but-
shall.
you're saying that this language is in the RSA's and
The RSA says it says you cannot you cannot, for ADUs. The RSA says that the dwellings are exempt from the district acreage density requirement.
But we may, if we want to do detached, we may
Right.
require
We
acreage.
may,
it doesn't say they're exempt from, because the way I'm reading this right now, and I feel someone could also interpret it exactly what I'm interpreting, is that you have a vacant piece of land, you build your main house and ADUs.
Yeah.
This says you're exempt from density requirements.
That's correct.
that's correct.
So,
That's
so in
correct.
the,
That's
I'm
correct.
saying the R5, you own a 3 acre lot. You can build your main house. Or you subdivide and create a 3 acre lot, and you can put
Well, you can't subdivide in R5.
Right.
You could
Well,
not create, you
well,
could not
you
create
can-
a 3 acre
you
lot.
can build, okay, you have a,
I have a 5 acre lot.
but you can do the subdivision after the facts.
No, cause it's
No, still
R5.
5 acres.
I think you're trying to come up with an example here. Let me see if I can help you.
Yeah.
If you had a 3 acre lot and you wanted to put a house and 2 ADUs on
Mhm.
it, one of which could be detached, you could do that.
Right.
That 3 acre lot, depending on the zoning that it was in, let's say it was in the R1 zone,
Mhm.
you could divide it into 3 separate lots.
Mhm. Yeah.
It technically,
If you have the frontage.
theoretically.
Right.
If it was in a 3 acre lot, zone, you couldn't. And nor could you in a 5 acre zone.
Right.
So,
Yeah, okay, it's,
Yeah, if you've got a
Yeah,
3 acre
yeah.
lot and a 5 acre, you
yeah,
can still have 2
grandfathered,
ADUs.
if it's grandfathered as a
Yeah.
3 acre.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you can't subdivide that,
Right.
make it even
Yeah.
smaller.
and I think the intent here, of course, is we should just drive back to the paragraph 1 is that we're honoring the provisions in the master, or the recommendations of the master plan to, where possible, increase the density of housing to increase the housing inventory in the town. And as one technique is to permit ADUs, and the town of Enfield is chosen to be a little bit more generous about that than what is required by state law.
Mhm.
And we feel like, as has been explained, there's a few changes we wanted to make to our existing ADU law that we felt should enable a few more of these to be built. So far, we've had how many applications in 2 years?
Less than 5.
And that is very consistent with the amount of ADUs that have been built statewide.
And if you think about a developer who buys a piece of land, and let's say it's in the R1 district, wants to put a house up, a spec house, and he says, I'm gonna also put up 2 ADUs. Well, if he's intending to rent all 3 properties, okay, then we got 3 new housing units in town. He is going to sell the entire parcel, then he's got to run that risk of having built a parcel that may not be attractive to that many buyers, because a lot of folks just don't want to be a landlord. They will never build an ADU because of that fact. Others who definitely want to be a landlord. I wish I could do it on my lot, but mine is just darn too small. I have 1/3 of an acre in the R1 district. There's nothing I can do.
Okay, let's take somebody who is online, Mary Ann Crandall, is it? Can you unmute yourself? Can you hear? All right, we'll come back to you later in the back. Can you state your name, please?
Gwen Dessert. I live at 18 Seymour Farm. To go back to his question, I did pull up the RSA and it says a municipality may permit, but it says detached accessory dwelling units shall comply with the requirements. So isn't this saying it has to comply with the zoning ordinances that are in place?
Could you read the entire sentence that's relevant?
Sorry.
It sounds like you stopped mid-sentence.
So it says, so RSA says, a municipality is not required to, but may permit detached accessory dwelling units. So you
Right.
guys are allowed it, which is fine.
Yeah.
Detached accessory dwelling units shall comply with the requirements of and any municipal ordinances or regulations adopted pursuant to, and it states the.
Okay, so what we are doing is we are proposing a new municipal ordinance or an expansion of the existing one. And if the town decides that this is something that they would like to have happen, then a detached ADU unit would have to comply with what we say here in this ordinance. That makes sense?
Is it for contradicting this though? Saying that it doesn't have to comply?
No, it would have to comply with every other provision of the ordinance, except for the fact that currently in the R1 district, now let's just assume we don't already have an ADU provision, nor would. So if we, regardless of what the town has written, state law says that an ADU is allowed by right.
Right.
One, state law.
State law.
State law, one, okay, yes.
One ADU is allowed by right. We're saying second ADU is allowed by right as well, if this ordinance is approved, amendment is approved.
It's already in.
Yep. Sorry, you're right.
Seconds already in.
Second one's already in. The only thing we're doing is increasing the size.
Increasing the size.
It still has to meet all the other requirements
I'm
of setback. And building code, obviously, and any other situation.
I'm still getting hung up on the fact that this line, number 4, states ADU and main dwellings are exempt from
That's-
district acreage.
That seems to
It's like-
conflict with the RSA. is
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, I just feel that that's a big loophole for someone to exploit.
No,
Um,
district acreage requirement is 1 unit, quarter acre.
but just it's exempt, but that's the problem that I'm having. That's what we currently have. But this language says you are now exempt from that if you build an ADU.
You have to be exempt.
No, because it's the main dwelling unit plus ADU is exempt. It's just, I don't think it's necessary to have that line in there, and I think it has potential for being a problem,
If
and I don't think it's necessary.
you could cite an example as to how that would be a problem. I'm listening.
Yeah, yeah,
So I thought we heard two different things. Dan,
You want to state your name,
yeah,
please?
Dan Regan, Lock Haven. I thought I heard two different things. When number 4 first came up, Mr. Kiley, I thought I heard you say, Mr. Frack, I heard you say, this is state law.
State law says acreage is exempt.
But then this dessert said, hey, I'm reading
For
this.
detached, you're right, for detached, it's not state law.
So
It's
it's
the
number
ADU
four-
itself.
number 4 because of state law or because we're deciding as a municipality to do it?
I think it's the latter.
It is
It's
the
the
latter, definitely.
Oh,
Right, for detached.
yeah, it doesn't say, it says, but in the language here that we're proposing, the accessory dwelling units, plural S. So it's either attached, detached,
Right,
is exempt. State
Yes.
law says any detached is not exempt.
it says it's up to the municipality.
so number 4 is a decision of the planning board, not because of the
Right.
state.
Yeah,
Yes.
That's different than what I heard, so maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I think we kind of
Right,
misexplained that.
right.
Okay.
So John,
Lindsay,
So is number 4 then a change? Is that gonna be highlighted? So is that a
That's
proposed?
there already, right?
Is it there already or is that a proposed change now? Or is the only proposed change the 1,200 square footage?
well, the requirement that a new septic be put in
Oh, it-
Is new.
is something that we are proposing be added.
is 4 was just being discussed? That already exists?
Already in, isn't it?
It's already in?
Already there.
right?
It's already there.
Okay, so, okay, so I guess my question actually is, as you're looking at zoning regs, because you mentioned that we've only had 5 applications for
Right.
ADUs in the past year.
More
Probably
than
3
years.
Couple, 3, yep.
What problem are you trying to solve with changing some of this language? I like the septic one for sure, because that to not, if you have 5 bedrooms, you should have a septic system that fits 5 bedrooms. Like that's shouldn't be a wonky language. But as far as like increasing the size, which I'm a little like, doesn't really feel like an ADU. It feels like all of it, feels like another main house, But is this to help encourage people that, are they not applying because they can't build the size that they want to? Is that what's hard on the street?
Yes, we had,
Or have we been granting variances?
No.
Okay,
no, we had 2 people come in, one on Route 4A, who said, I'd like to do this, but I want my parents to live in this, but 700 square feet isn't big enough for them. 800 at the time. Yeah. So we said, okay, 1,200 gets you a couple of bedrooms, it gets you a nice kitchen, living room. couple of bathrooms.
So it's a problem that has presented itself. We're not.
Right.
It has.
We basically said to them, we're sorry because the max we can do is 800.
And what you're getting with 800 square feet is a single person, maybe a couple.
Right.
Oh, I live in a very small space.
Yeah, so I'm thinking
I know.
that with 1,200 square feet,
And I
you
live
might get a young family.
Right.
So, I mean, I've lived in 400, I've lived in 800. I mean, I could
I
always.
live in
400,
9.
But then I can always stuff.
I've lived in 12. And, you know,
So, I just was
1,200
wondering,
with 2 kids was fine
Right. Like,
until they grew up.
what problem this was addressing that it's
Yeah.
been coming forward and instead of creating, variances or no, exceptions, which is what has people annoyed in that sense that we're trying to.
Okay, let's take a question from the internet now. Let's see if,
I believe it's Mary Ann Crandall.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, can you hear us? If you
She needs to
can,
unmute.
please unmute.
See in chat. And I get audio to work. So I'm just a listener for now. I guess she can't.
Okay.
Okay,
You can tell her that if she wants to submit a question via the chat,
yeah,
we'd be happy to do that. I see somebody else that's just
All right.
popped up.
who is that?
Me, I can give you the RSA for screen share if you think,
RSA for screen share.
one that Gwen mentioned.
I don't know.
You guys need to see the RSA for screen share?
Okay, if you don't need it, that's fine. I was just trying to get it for you. But my other question was, I realize that 5 is a very small sample size, but is the request for larger than 800 the exception or the rule?
Rob, maybe you can answer that best. Since you're the one that receives the applications.
Definitely have had a significant number of people call. When you try to tell them the options that they have, the ADU sort of excites them until they hear the 800 square foot threshold.
Mhm.
Especially for, that multi-generational thing that Phil was alluding to a little earlier, it's mom and dad who want to have a place at the kid's place and maybe spend their winters in Florida. 800 is just not enough for them at a mature age and, so it's just more flexibility. And like I said earlier, I think families, this whole thing started out as mother-in-law, like one older person that needed maybe some supervision from the kids or whatever. But what we're seeing is this kind of housing is becoming very valuable to help solve the housing crisis and to try to get more housing for families, which is, I think, a goal we should have. We've got declining school enrollment and so forth. Should absolutely be a part of our goal to try to get some young families some space.
People my age have their 3,000 square foot house and the kids are gone.
Yep.
And you want to move to a smaller space because the kids are gone, you don't want to maintain such a big space, any number of reasons. And in the master plan, people have expressed a desire to continue living in this town. So having 1,200 foot ADUs might help them stay in town. Any other questions or comments? Did we get one on the chat?
I think so.
It's Sealy.
Sealy, we'll take your
Yes.
question.
I want to speak to the,
You want to state your name for the record?
Sealy
please?
Off-Euro.
Okay,
I want to talk about the 5 acre area. And I know we already have, dwelling units. But what we don't have are the 5 or 4, 5, 6, or the house that can go out. And I think it's a big mistake and it will fragment the land because I know even because of the housing crisis, people are gonna come in, they're gonna wanna make some money, they're gonna come in and they'll just add to the problem out there, they'll just take the corridors, there'll be too many people, and you could have 6 families on a lot. That's not what it's
So
zoned.
what, are we talking about ADUs or?
Yes, we are talking about ADU.
You can't have 6 families because you can only have 2 ADUs on a lot.
One detached,
Excuse me?
and one detached,
No, no.
correct?
No,
No.
no,
Two total,
2
either
total.
attached or detached.
Well, she means
Well,
that
that's
there's
what I
actually
just
3
said.
housing units. That's
Pardon?
principal residence,
Principal
that's
residence,
1, and
Right.
2 ADUs, that's 3. That's as many as you could possibly have.
I'd like to see one. That solves the mother-in-law thing. And it's happening all over anyway, especially on the lakes. People are making their garages into, apartments. They might not be saying that, but they're doing it. And the same thing happens, all around the lakes. I see some of it. But I tell you, don't go and foul up the whole R5 acres with all this housing, because you'll just ruin it. It will be like any other place. But I do think in town and what you're saying, it's perfect to do that. But not out in the country.
So,
I really,
so would you limit this to R1 and R3 and commercial business?
yes, I would.
Okay,
But you already, I don't mind having, someone have a detached, dwelling or an attached dwelling unit in the house. That's not gonna bring in all these additional families. Why, the more housing you have, the more people you can have. That's, and I really worry about that R5 district. I really do. It's too much. It grows, and it's growing now as it is. And I'd like to have be some protection of it. And I
Okay.
do think that would be a lot.
we have a comment over there. Please state your name.
I'm Dr. Ty, and I agree with Steely in regards to density. But one of the things that I heard when I attended the master plan meetings, that people wanted to remain open space, wildlife. Now, I'm not so concerned about anybody with 5 acres trying to put a bunch of houses on there that they personally own. What concerns me is there's a lot of property in Enfield that are owned by real estate agents who'd love to sell it to developers. Those people are going to take every advantage of any leeway in the zoning ordinances that are approved. These have to go before the Saturday meeting.
The town,
oh, no,
right.
the Tuesday.
So it's possible that the people will recognize this and vote these down. But I think that the density here is going to put more pressure on the water supply. And one of the things that is predicted to happen with climate change is drought. The last 2 wells you dug in this town, one of them was a dud, produces nothing but 11 gallons of water a minute. The whole community depends upon wells. Those that are on the municipal system are absolutely critically dependent upon wells. And those wells don't have a large enough aquifer to keep them filled if you keep adding density to this property, to this town. You have to understand the carrying capacity exists in this community. And if you exceed that, you're going to destroy the quality of life no matter how much money you think you bring in.
Okay, thank you for that comment. We will talk about it. Anyone else?
I just said,
Mr. Reagan?
yes, one question, please, for clarity's sake. Can you please tell me in this first amendment, what exactly is changing from the current ordinance? I understand going from 800 to 1200. Are there other things in there that are changing?
Yes,
Okay, could you list those for me?
okay. 800 to 1200 as the max size.
Yep.
the bit about the septic system is changing. In other words, if you have a septic system in your house that's designed for 3 bedrooms and you add an ADU with 2 bedrooms, the town is saying that you have to put in a septic system that will be capable of servicing 5 bedrooms. As opposed to the state, which just says you have to have a design, you don't have to put it in. And the reason for that, again, is because we want to make sure that the septic systems are not overloaded because of the extra 2 bedrooms, because that can do major damage to our water resources. And finally, where are we?
Definition. The
The
definition.
definitions. We added conditioned space as a definition.
Item 6.
Item 6.
So if you got
Item
a,
6,
yeah,
right?
if you got 1,000 square foot barn, or 2,000 square foot barn, you wanna put 1,000 square foot ADU in it. You only have to eat that space,
Yeah.
that only counts as your ADU then.
And David, the number 6, the
Number 6.
building code.
You have to.
Right. Right, it has,
You have to
it
meet
has
the
to
building
meet the
code.
building code. And that will keep the neighborhood, the view of the neighborhood intact.
Those are basically the changes.
Anyone else?
You do have a question that came in on the
Okay,
chat.
could you read it
I will.
for us, Rob?
This is from Marion Crandall. Can you please talk me through how on, let's say, a 20-acre parcel, someone wants to build a main house with 3 bedrooms and 2 detached? You can't have 2
You
detached.
can't.
No. So 2 ADUs with 2 bedrooms each. So that's a new 6-bedroom septic? Yep.
3 bedrooms,
3, 2,
Let's
two,
work with
2.
7 bedrooms.
7.
Yep.
yeah.
Won't that be a total of possible of 6 cars on the road? How could a developer afford to make affordable housing? They can develop, but it won't be.
It's not necessarily, this ordinance is not necessarily aimed at affordable housing. It's aimed at housing in general. We like to encourage affordable housing. We like to encourage workforce housing. But that doesn't mean that everything that will be built in town will meet those definitions. So if somebody has a 20-acre lot and they want to put in a house and 2 ADUs, and, you know, they've got the money to do it and want to build $1 million mansion, it certainly is their right.
That's
With this,
with the existing ordinance. The only difference here is that we're just allowing the ADU to be a little larger,
Yeah,
and requiring a septic system to match the number of bedrooms. And, the other things are fairly minor, but you know, the building code issue.
And thinking about the 5-acre zoning area, that's where the building code issue might actually come up the most. Just because that's where somebody would have to match, is they have the space theoretically to put in a mobile home. This would not allow them to do that.
Unless they already had a mobile home.
Correct. But honestly,
Right.
like if they have an existing stick frame house,
Right.
they would have to build to that building code for the ADU. So this would actually put more limits on most of the existing housing stock in the rural areas.
yeah.
I just want to ask a hypothetical question. If you had 20 acres.
Yep.
In an R5 district, you could make 4 lots out of that.
Correct.
True.
Then you can put a house on each of those lots and 2 additional units. That is a density that is got to be prevented, because you're not gonna have enough water if people do this on a large scale basis in this town. And sewage, septic systems to absorb that kind of material when you put that many houses and accessory dwelling units on a 20-acre piece of land.
Well,
I've been doing some measurements of fecal bacteria that are getting into Crystal Lake. And it is directly proportional to the size of the lots. If you have a small lot on Crystal Lake, as 69 of the 172 lots that are on the shoreline of Crystal Lake do, you are putting in more fecal bacteria into the water from your leach field because the land that is filtering material that comes out of your last septic tank. And if that is not sufficient, that bacteria is running into the water and it will continue to run down the land too. So you've got a problem with people having their septic systems contaminate their well by the density that you create potentially with this kind of thing. And developers will do this. And I think that that's my complaint, is not so much the idea of doing this in R1 districts, but if you extend this development potential to R5 districts, you're going to create basically urban sprawl that will destroy the rural habitat. And that was one of the things, Mr. Track, that you pointed out. You always think of Enfield as a rural community. That will be the end of the rural community if you allow this to happen on R5.
Okay, do you want to respond?
I do, because I tend to agree with you. And how I would address that is with a new zoning ordinance, which we are in process of rewriting. That is a huge, huge undertaking. And what we've talked about just in rough outline is that there would be new zoning districts set up for the lakeshore properties. And it's at that point, I think we can begin to adequately address what you're talking about. Right now, again, the only differences we're proposing for this year, this town meeting, is that the ADU be allowed to be a little bit bigger, that the septic system actually is more stringent than what's in our current zoning ordinance. We already allow 2 ADUs anyway. And so I guess I'm feeling that we've got about a year to write a new zoning ordinance, and that I pledge to you that I will do everything possible that I can to see that we address what the concerns you mentioned adequately. This is just not the opportunity to do that. This is focused on one small section of the zoning ordinance, and we have 3 other amendments that also focus on small sections. It's the best we could do for this year.
Can I just, for clarification?
Go ahead.
This
Whitney.
density that we're talking about already exists, right? We're
Yes.
not proposing an increase to that at all. It's already in the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay,
And we did a pretty poor job explaining that when we started this hearing. I think we should have actually the existing zoning ordinance up somewhere or a copy for you. We'll do better next time. But I think it's finally beginning to be, we're becoming more clear about what we're trying to do here, I hope. Yeah.
Sealy.
And by R5. The other thing that happens is, nobody's been talking about it, are the services. It's the traffic. I mean, it's gonna change the whole area. And they're the watersheds to the lakes. So you can have it all chopped up with this or septics or whatever. But I'd really like to see this all areas taken out and leave the R5 the way it is now. With the ADUs 1 and 2. There's no law that says you have to have it. I got it right here. So they just want you to have that available for people. So we're not really cutting anything out. We're adding a lot.
I get, there's a separate item within our proposed changes for R5.
There is.
Is that what you're talking about?
I'm sorry.
There's a separate item regarding the R5 district that we're discussing tonight, but right now we're on ADUs. Is your comment for ADUs?
I'm talking about the R5.
The increase to allow, to look up.
Duplex truck.
We haven't got to
duplex.
that point.
Yeah,
We'll talk
So I
about that
just
in a
wanna-
while.
I just want to make sure that we're talking about, your comments are for the ADU
In the R5.
change or the R5 change.
Sure.
Okay,
Sounds like we're on.
let's take a comment from Dr. Buffet.
Tim, to paraphrase what you just said, and that you haven't done a good job and this thing is not ready yet. Perhaps, the whole discussion is premature and should be withdrawn from, presentation at that meeting.
I think between now and the time that, town meeting happens, we can take what we've learned tonight and make it understandable.
In the narrative.
And-
For the,
And,
for the amendments,
excuse me?
Yes,
so you
Yeah,
don't have to
we-
have another hearing.
We could have another public hearing.
You don't have to.
You don't have to. But if we make substantial changes, then we would have to have another public hearing. That's the way I understand the law.
right.
So if hypothetically, if we were to decide that Sealy and Dr. Theis have very valid points about ADUs in the R5 district, and we wanted to say that R5 is not included,
Exempt.
then we would have to have another public hearing after the board made that decision.
Well, it can't be exempt from ADU.
Right,
By state law, you have to have at least
you have
one.
to have one.
Which we
That's
do
not a
already.
change.
That's why I say leave it as it is now.
It's two right now.
I know, but it's better than what you had and what you did.
Huh?
It's two now. We're saying two. The changes are the size.
There might be some confusion because we have a separate amendment.
I know there's a separate, this is
Yeah,
a separate.
but we're talking about ADU.
Right, but it feels like maybe
Right.
they're getting confused.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, we either go with this or we pull this. If we pull this, it ends up that they're 800 square feet. That's really the only difference, and they don't have to put in septic. Because the present one says 800 square feet and they don't have to put the septic in. Now, if that's what you want to have, you can have that. Or you get 1,200 feet and the ADU. But if we change anything substantive here, we have to have a public hearing by 2 weeks from tonight. Because after the 28th, you cannot have public hearings on planning board articles.
Sharon,
It seems to me that we're gonna have further discussion beyond what we're having right now this evening about an amendment that's
Right,
proposing to allow two-family and three-family dwellings
Yes.
in the rural residential district.
Yep.
From my perspective, this conversation belongs there. And as just a precursor to that, one of the things I'm going to suggest is when we discuss that, I see that as opening the barn door. And even if just you say, Tim, in a year, we're gonna do this other thing to residential, to rural District 5. I would suggest that you don't open that barn door wider for a year. Make these changes that we're talking about with the septic and with the size, but not to increase the density until this has much more thought and process and whatever else you're gonna put with it in a year. There's no rush on this. Nobody is gonna lose out. And especially the people who value the rural character of this town, as we've heard this evening, and I also agree with, we're not gonna like, oh my God, that used to be a beautiful field. Now look at it. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay. I think we're gonna close the public hearing on Kurt. You get the last word.
I just want to run this one by you and tell me if this is wrong. On number 4, the density, district acreage density. Someone owns a parcel with an existing dwelling unit and a zone, say 3 or 5, that is like 1 plus acres greater than, so it's like either a 4 acre or a 6 acre, builds 2 ADUs. He then decides to subdivide, leaving a 3 acre or 5 acre vacant lots. But the house and the 2 ADUs are now on a separate lot.
You can't do that.
Why not?
You can't subdivide that
Why not?
in a 3 acre. You
It-
can't
it's-
subdivide 1 acre off of a.
But it says here, it's not required, it's the density,
No,
not.
no,
that
Kurt.
was-
No, it doesn't, Kurt.
It's referring to the.
The present
unit
lot.
Per acre that.
Density and lot size are two different things.
Right.
You can't violate the lot size. This is saying the density, you know, 1 per 3 acres or 3 per 3 acres is a density.
Right.
The number of acres is just the quantity. You can't, it's not exempt from the number, the lots are not
Right.
exempt from the number of acres that are required.
Right.
So if you're required to have 5 acres, you're still required to have 5 acres.
Yeah,
Mm-mm.
The lot itself is still required to be 5 acres.
Okay.
so if you had
Because you
a
get raw
6
land.
acre, if you had a 6 acre lot in the R5 district, you could not subdivide that, period. End of conversation.
Right.
It's a lot size requirement, not a
Right.
density.
Not a
Well,
density.
I guess time will tell. It's what-
Now you could have a 10 acre lot.
Yeah, no, I'm done, no, it's just taking away someone might.
Just need number 2.
Just one other quick question, and I
Okay.
don't know if Rob can answer. Number 6, the building code. Is the building code's difference for modular and, prefab homes than a stick-built?
Yes,
They are.
yes. Manufactured housing and, modular are, regulated by HUD.
Okay,
Well,
It's a HUD building
the
code.
modular is,
I have a modular. It was
It's
built to HUD building code.
Specification.
In the master bedroom closet in my house, it's, it's got
not
all the
all,
language.
okay, not
Yeah.
all modulars are built to HUD code.
If, yeah, well, if you wanna sell modular homes in multiple states, you have to be in that business. Unless you're
But
just
it's
gonna
a
sell in
different-
New Hampshire and
different set
manufacture in New
for-
Hampshire.
Yes.
I mean, for a stick
For a stick
built,
built or a
it's
modular.
the, you know, the building code, the national,
Yeah.
whatever the town adopted, building code. But modular homes or mobile homes, well, mobile homes, I know what they
Manufactured.
manufactured. Manufactured homes come under a different building code.
Yeah.
HUD.
Has anybody done anything about measuring what a mobile home would be in square footage? Or a manufactured home?
Well, 10 by 70, 700 square feet. That's pretty typical.
Yeah.
Double wide's 20 by, 70, 1,400 square
Are
feet.
they all under 1,200?
No,
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 Well,
no.
Just wondering what that,
no, you're gonna bigger than 12, but
You're gonna
a lot of them are under 12 in the
Yeah.
1,000 square foot.
okay, so I'm gonna close the public hearing on this First Amendment. And we'll get on to the next one, and then we'll come back and the board will deliberate what we want to do if we decide we want to do anything. So the next one is parking, and Tim, I believe you are the author of this one,
I'll do my best.
please.
So, the existing parking regulations within the zoning ordinance are a mess. We tried to decipher what was meant, particularly when you're dealing with commercial properties. And we came up with so many different interpretations of what was there that it just got to be a little bit ridiculous. So we went through the zoning ordinance, anything that dealt with parking is pretty much here, dealt with here. Or is dealt with here, not pretty much. And we made a few changes, other than wording again, just logistics here in terms of the way things work, but I'll try to point out what is different here than what the existing zoning ordinance has. So the dimensions. In our zoning ordinance, we have two different dimensions, so there's a conflict in that term. So we wanted to settle on one, and so we recommend that spaces be 10 by 20 feet, but the minimum size is 9 by 18. The current zoning ordinance, in one place it says it must be 10 by 20, and another place it says it must be 9 by 18. So this is our way to handle that discrepancy. Residential parking, I don't think there was a change in that, right, Kurt?
No.
One space per housing unit.
That sounds right, yeah.
Where the big changes were in the temporary lodging, churches, retail parking. And that was attempted to be addressed in the existing zoning ordinance with a formula and a calculation. And again, we just couldn't figure out what the heck was intended when those original calculations, those tables were put together. And so also having studied and read quite a lot about particularly commercial parking requirements nationwide, there's quite a lot of recommendations from all kinds of housing and land use organizations that the towns need to simplify their parking arrangements. And so basically what we're saying here is if you got one of these other kinds of uses, non-residential, you're going to come to the planning board with your plan, your site plan, and you're going to show us how many parking spaces you feel that you need to service your business. And it says here that property owners must demonstrate providing adequate parking and loading areas for the use intended. Now that's a little open-ended, but who best to calculate that? And we feel like that is the person who's spending the money on the property, who's taking the risk on the business they're developing, that they're going to put the right number of parking spaces into themselves. Otherwise, we always overcalculate. We end up parking lots that are bigger than they need to be. We're wasting land. We're putting too much asphalt down, and that's impervious surface, and we're causing runoff problems, that sort of thing. So we wanted to simplify that, really leave it up to the site designer and the owner of the property to demonstrate to us the parking needs that they have and how they're going to satisfy things. There is a section here on parking lot materials and stormwater treatment. I think that's it. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Tim. I just want to make a couple of comments on the residential parking, particularly in multifamily situations. The board felt that the market is going to kind of drive that. In other words, if somebody puts in 6 apartments and we say you need 12 parking spaces, but the apartments are 1 bedrooms, why do you need all those extra parking spaces? So we felt that should be driven by the landlord or the person who constructs or modifies the multifamily building. And likewise on the commercial, I think the example that we used was a furniture store, which might be 20,000 square feet. And the way our current regs are written, that furniture store, which doesn't have an awful lot of traffic, but they need a lot of square feet to store all of their inventory in a display situation, they might need 10 parking spaces because that's how many customers they think they're gonna have at any one time. As opposed to a grocery store of the same size, which might have 100 people. So we feel as a board that the person who owns the building or is designing the building needs to think about parking, and the law of economics says that they're gonna put in what they think they need and no more. So that's the rationale behind our thinking, and that seems to be the way that parking is being addressed in planning circles around the state and around the country. Questions or comments?
Just clarify, on this, it says change section 401.7 to read in its entirety. Is that true, or is it just subparagraph H that is being changed? Because that's, I think, the Shed Street one, and I think it's just the parking that needs to be changed in that and not the entirety of the article.
Tim, would you, can you address that?
Look that up and. Another question.
Yeah, let's take Dr. Buffet's question while Tim researches that.
I can understand the reason for flexibility, but totally abdicate regulation of parking. And again, runs the risk of changing the whole character of this community. If there's not adequate parking, because I've only got a certain number of spaces, but I'm gonna have twice as many customers, particularly if I have a pub or something like that downtown. Where there's already very few parking spaces for people, and you're getting that from, as complaints from current business.
Well, currently the downtown area is exempt from the parking requirements. And has been for quite a while.
That means that they're exempt, so
They don't have.
It means they don't have to follow what's in the ordinance.
Well, what's in the ordinance that says no requirements. There are no parking requirements
In that.
for a certain section
Currently, yeah,
of, yeah,
in the downtown area.
it's a defined section of the downtown.
Yeah, okay.
High Street to Oak Grove.
Yeah,
so if there's no requirements for parking, does that mean that a business or a residence, multifamily, multi-apartment building, doesn't have to consider that, and it's just like, fine, you live here, park where you may. And I just see that as a problem, as David said, in our community,
But
parking is already an issue. To say, you know, you're absolved of that responsibility to a business owner or a developer, I just think that's poor planning.
If you're a developer and there's not enough parking, you are not gonna be able to rent that particular unit. If you've got a 2-bedroom unit and there's only enough on-site parking for one car, and you're renting a unit that is likely to have a couple and 2 cars, then the market says that the potential tenant is not going to be able to live in that apartment unless they can find another parking space. And in reality, some people who live in that area have found other parking spaces that they do rent. And, you know, the supply of those is limited, but at some point, you know, supply and demand will take over and it'll be self-limited.
Example you're giving doesn't apply because to downtown Enfield, because you said there's no regulation. So there's,
residential.
somebody could develop something down there and have no parking.
Good. That is the case now.
But good luck running a business.
Want for our community. For people aren't gonna come if they can't park their car or they have to drive around trying to figure out where to go. They have to leave their cars somewhere.
Well, we have to live with the downtown area that we have. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of parking space there.
Just looking at planning for Enfield going forward. What do we want? What is a problem now? What could we make better? And I just feel strongly that if we ignore this and just say, oh, well, it is what it is. I think that's, no offense, I think that's short-sighted.
Well, how would we then create more parking downtown in that Main to Oak Street?
High to Oaks Grove.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There is
I don't know how you create more parking, but I think what you do is if there's new development, you require the people who have new development to have parking for their teams.
Let me attempt to address your question. I'm gonna read just the applicable sentence here about the community business district, and it's defined, it's a pretty small area, right downtown on Main Street. Within that downtown area, I go on to the definition. Parking is exempt from the requirements of the rest of the ordinance. I'm not gonna read it, I'm trying to paraphrase this, but basically what they recognized when they wrote this some years ago was that there was no way they could get a business down there if they had to have to comply with the commercial parking requirements that was in the ordinance. So what we're proposing here doesn't change any of that. That's still a problem. We couldn't really address it this year because we really want to have a completely new village district with a new defined community business district downtown. And that's the point over the next few months when we're trying to plan to address what you're talking about. Did that make sense?
So you're saying it's to come? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I would hope so.
No, you're perfect. You're completely right that it's an issue that needs to be addressed. It's just, it wasn't something we could deal with right now. But that hasn't changed in many, many years.
And the town did vote that in many years ago. I don't know when, but it's something that the town said, this is what we want to do.
So this just expands that to the rest of the town or the R1 district. I mean, if there's no need to change, no ability to change the central district, which is where the major parking issues are, why are we exploring it? Why are we expanding it to elsewhere?
Because if, let's say a business wanted to go in on Route 4, the Route 4 corridor, which is a community business district. What's the Route 4 business district?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The parking requirements in the ordinance as they exist are really, really confusing. And we don't know how to apply them. It's that confusing. And so that's why we want to simplify that part. We don't want somebody to come in and say, we want to put a business in your town. This could happen tomorrow. And we have parking regulations that are just onerous and too confusing, that sort of thing. So that's why we want to simplify it.
Basically getting back to the furniture store. As it sits today, based on the size of the building, if it was a 20,000 square foot building, they would need 40 spaces. You need a hell of a lot of land to put 40 spaces when you only need 10. And that's, it's also the size of, we need to use, you need to best use of land. And best use of land is not asphalt parking lots for spaces that you don't need. Kind of like Family Dollar's got 20 spaces and there's never more than 5 people there. But based on the size of that building, they had to have that number of parking spaces. Because that's what the regulation said.
Go ahead, Regan. It sounds to me that the planning board recognizes that there's a problem you're taking a step in the right
You're
direction.
fixing the problem.
You realize you're not getting all the way there.
Right.
I think as our elected officials, we have some faith in you, and I do have some faith in you, that we're doing the right thing.
We're not elected, by the way, we're
Point.
appointed.
We work for
I take back everything I just said.
Really, yeah, you know. I mean, downtown's it's a problem. The only way to get rid of the problem is to tear down buildings, because the only way you're gonna get parking there is to tear down buildings.
Sealy?
I have a question. I don't know if any of you, have seen this, but the building that's new, it has the apartments.
Yep.
Yeah.
It came for the ZBA, and I know we discussed the parking, and, but now when I went down there the other day, they had somebody put all the mailboxes, all brown, lined right up along the building. And I would love to know who authorized that, because that is like,
Post
Well,
office,
actually, no,
and the building looked good.
Sealy, all of those mailboxes include mailboxes from across
or
the
across the
street.
street.
Yes, I know. I
And-
figured that. There's 16 of them.
And
Yes.
it makes it easier for the rural carrier to deliver the mail. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, to me, it's crazy that there's rural delivery on Main Street within, what, a quarter mile of a post office? Seems like they
Well,
should have
that-
box, but.
You know, that's another issue.
Exactly.
I thought it had to do with someone wanted to snow plow when the plow was clogging, because their mailbox, if they clean it right out, as I went along.
If, actually, if you look at that, we got 3 more parking spaces downtown because of that. Because they put that wall back there, there now are 3 more parking spaces, and they're public parking spaces.
Eric?
I had a question probably for Tim, since he wrote this. Number 5, community business district. In the community business district, a special exception may be granted from the requirements of section 409 for parking and loading areas for new uses and structures and on non-conforming lots that predates the adoption of this ordinance. Why do we have to have that paragraph there when number 4, right above it, says, which does commercial, industrial, institutional, blah, blah, retail, which is everything that's in the community business districts. Sufficient loading areas must be provided to accommodate shipping and receiving functions.
Because we were trying to find, yeah,
No, this is on your proposal.
no, I know.
I think the answer, Kurt, is because 4 applies to all zoning districts and 5 says in the community district, you can have a special exception to
Right.
4.
That's why.
So you don't have to, so in the community business, you get a special exception saying you don't need sufficient
You
loading.
can.
Yes.
Doesn't say you have to give it to them. It says you can get it. It's up to the zoning board whether or not they want to give it to them.
I just- To me, it's just like. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do a zoning for anything that's in the zoning board for anything that's in the zoning. Special exception typically is meet this criteria, which is everything at 4 cents to make sure it's sufficient.
Pretty sure, Kurt, just give me a minute to find it. And find the section. I can load. It's like so hard to. Something else you could be talking about.
I think this is the last topic on parking, so
here it
let's stay on parking.
So in the section 409 on parking and loading areas, there is item 7, which reads exactly as this reads. And I didn't want to screw around with changing something there that might have implications in a different area. So just left it in there. That's what it currently says.
Yeah, but we're changing everything in 409 to what you proposed.
Right, and that would have done away with this section. I wasn't sure we could want to do that, so that's why I left it.
Yeah, but with the new 409, everything that's in the current regs disappears from 409. And it's what you presented.
No,
Yes.
no,
Well,
this,
no, you're very-
this is the new forum. Parking and loading.
Yeah, right.
Item 7 is in the new parking lot. And item 7 is in the old parking lot.
Talking about number 5 of yours.
Five of you, the proposed one is the community business district.
Sorry. Number 5, word for word, is in section 409 of the old one.
I understand, but in the old one, because things were so confusing, that's probably why section 5 was there.
Well,
I think with your new rights, section 5 is not necessary. Because number 4 accommodates, just says sufficient loading. It doesn't stay, the new section 4 that deals with loading areas and parking for commercial spaces says just make it sufficient. But the old ones were giving numbers.
Well, we could talk about that once we close the hearing, and you may be right. Maybe we could simplify this a little bit further, but at the time, it didn't look like it fit, so
No.
it's kind of where we're at.
It looks to me that we need this section 5 to accommodate the fact that our central business district downtown area some parking issues that we really can't resolve just by saying sufficient. Because in some cases, sufficient is no parking spaces or some amount that is clearly not adequate.
Well, I think what would happen is if someone proposed a retail establishment in one of the lower levels of one of the apartment buildings in downtown, that they would say, basically, we can't meet section 4 of your new parking regulations because we have no parking. We have no land at all. And so what I think section 5 is saying that we understand that might be the case, and we can grant a special exception from the requirements of section 409, depending on what you want to do.
That's the way I interpret it.
Right.
Yeah.
You happy with that, Kurt?
Not really.
Okay,
Move on.
all right, let's move on and close the public hearing on parking. Okay. One more question.
Did you?
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, you were absolutely right. So we do need to make one small administrative change. I don't think will require a new public hearing.
I will not.
Is item 2 of the proposed amendment should say change section 401.7 H in
Okay,
parentheses to read in its entirety.
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, good catch.
Yep.
So now we will close the public hearing on the parking amendment. And we will go on to the next one, which has to do with the community business district and the Route 4 district. The board's thinking on this is that in the amount of time, which I think is a good 10 or maybe even more years, that we've had the Route 4 district, it has not accomplished what we had hoped it would accomplish, i.e. commercial development. And the fact that it is form-based and we dictate to potential developers or, you know, commercial tenants, builders, what their building has to look like, has turned a lot of people off, according to Rob Taylor, who gets to talk to these people on a regular basis. So we thought we would return the Route 4 district to what it was before we adopted it and just put it as part of the community district. Community business district. So that's one question. And the other question that relates to it is, shall we make the minimum lot size a 1/4 acre where connection to sewer is available? And that would allow for a developer who might want to put a commercial building on Route 4, but the lot goes further back, he could put residential housing there. And that's consistent with the change we made, it was either last year or the year before, when we reduced the lot size in the R1 district to a 1/4 acre where there is municipal sewer available. So that's our rationale, and our hope is that we would be able to take that eastern end of Route 4 and see it become more commercially and residentially oriented as the years go on. Questions or comments? Everybody likes it? Okay.
I don't know, Nate Miller, I guess, I don't really, I've been quiet tonight, I don't have an opinion per se about this particular suggestion. But I was around during the time period when the Route 4 district came to being, and I know the reasoning for the Route 4 district coming into being, and that was when utilities were extended on Route 4 up to the top of the hill near the Canaan town line. And people were very, very frightened about that corridor becoming something that resembled Route 12A's little brother, of automobile oriented big box commercial development set way back from the road. And so the Route 4 district put some guardrails around that. People said they wanted the area to look like New England with pitched roofs and building sizes that were smaller and buildings that were closer to the road and walkability of future sidewalks. So that's kind of how and why the Route 4 district came to be. Of course, the floodgates of development never actually materialized once the utilities came in. But I do think that the board should be conscious of putting some guardrails around what the area should function like in the future. Because I don't think it was Enfield's vision at the time, and it may still not be Enfield's vision to have that corridor be a commercial strip of automobile-oriented big box stores. I think people vision, the vision was more, doctor's offices with housing either behind or on top of, mixture of uses in an area that looked like New England. So that was, it hasn't obviously come to fruition that way, but that was the reason behind the Route 4 district coming into being, was to kind of prevent the area from becoming a commercial strip like 12A. So, whether or not it should be reverted to the community business district this year, I'll leave to all of you to decide. But and the voters at town meeting on the Tuesday voting session, but that there was a reasoning for why the Route
Oh,
Four
yeah.
district came to
Yeah.
be. I do think that we should be conscious as a town of still wanting to guide how that part of town develops in the future and how it looks and how it functions. And so it's something to think about in the zoning rewrite that's pending.
Okay, thanks for that comment, Nate. Dr. Buffet.
Again, well, I agree with you that I don't necessarily want a bunch of big box stores there. It certainly, makes sense to concentrate on commercial development, in that area, as much as we can. Hopefully tasteful, but it's hard to regulate taste.
Rob, you've had some interest, but then, those zoning regulations were too onerous, and so they walked, went another place. We're losing commercial businesses.
Lindsay?
That's correct, that's right. Where there's a Dollar General,
Yeah,
Family Dollar.
1, 2, 3 or 4 auto parts,
Yeah.
garages, auto places.
Yeah.
And a,
Dunkin' Donut.
pizza place.
well, okay, and then one of the 5 pizza places.
Yes,
So it still looks like 12A anyways. It's by,
right, yeah.
right, it's all auto places, it's
Yeah.
all like car washes,
Jake,
storage units,
And Family Dollar was built to
and Family
4.
Dollar, which does not have a pitch strip.
No, but it was built to 4
Yeah. with the-
because
with
it's
the
got windows on the front, even though they don't exist.
So
And that's what the
people,
form says.
Regs that got put in place didn't really.
It
do
didn't work.
the Job, because like everything that's there is exactly
Right.
what we didn't want anyways.
Right.
Or we're already
Well, a
there.
lot of it was pre-existing.
Okay.
Yeah, Family Dollar's the only new thing that's been there since Ford went in,
And the car wash.
and the car wash,
There's car-
right.
And I'm sure there's a storage unit somewhere.
well, the new one,
We're flagged by them.
the new storage unit that's off Flanders Street.
Oh, yeah.
That's outside, that's outside of it.
So that's not on Route 4 district.
That's
No,
outside.
that's outside.
That's in the business district.
Well, anyway, also to kind of address your 2 points, the community business district as it's written. Right now is just the section from Main Street to Oak Grove, pretty much. And a little bit up Main Street towards Lebanon. Route 4 district starts there and goes all the way to Canaan line. So putting this all together is still a completely inadequate, I think, zoning regulations for that kind of development. Is the kinds of businesses that you would want to encourage on Route 4, you don't want to encourage on Main Street.
Right.
And the current regulations are a mess when it comes to that. Why we want to rewrite these things.
Yeah. No, it just is, it just kind of, I was like, but isn't it exactly what we didn't want? And then the other places that are there are also, downtrodden, like, you know, they're.
They're,
Rather have.
they are functionally obsolete.
And
Right.
stuff that's on Miracle Mile that you could go to, then the top, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, that I don't even know what we're in, so.
Yeah, I mean, that whole strip there has just a mishmash of, not New England looking buildings and not contemporary looking buildings.
You know,
It smacks of like 1960 or something.
Okay. Just-
Yes,
I would like to address my concern of reducing to a 1/4 acre per lot size. Mainly because of the traffic. We're kind of stuck to what the state does with our roads. We already have a lot of traffic. And I don't know how that would impact a business being there, possibly housing or something, but I just worry about if we reduce the minimum lot size to a 1/4 acre from a 1/2 acre, that could potentially increase it and increasing our traffic. I think we need to think about what our traffic infrastructure can accommodate now, because we have no control over increase or fixing that. So that's my concern about reducing that part. And reducing the R1 district to a 1/4 acre I mean, that's already added where people can develop.
I mean, basically, the R1 district, we tried to bring the, zoning ordinance into conformance with what's actually on the ground. Because there's a lot of properties in R1 district that are on town sewer, but they weren't an acre, which is what it used to be. They're half acre, I'm sorry. I think your point about traffic is probably well taken. I don't know that a lot of businesses would want to locate on a quarter acre lot. Because you wouldn't have room for parking for your staff or your customers.
What's the intent of reducing it then?
Because there could be residential between Route 4 and the Canaan line. And if that's the case, then what would be the objection to having quarter acre lot size? Because they could be on town sewer.
It's also the only zoning district where there's public transportation available. Right?
True.
I think it's in the CB district too.
Can you repeat your comment?
I think it's in the CB district too, because I believe advanced transit stops almost at the bottom of my
What we're talking
driveway.
about.
It does. Okay, Kurt?
I thought we agreed to separate the, quarter acre to a different warrant article.
Yeah, we did. This is what got sent to the attorneys by accident, and since it would not be a material change, it would be easy for us to make that separation into two different articles without having to go through another public hearing, in my opinion.
I think you're probably.
Sounds good.
No, I agree, but right now it's presented as one.
Well, like I said, this is what got sent to the attorney.
Right,
This is our latest draft. We expect that there might be some changes. And when it goes to print for the official warrant article, it'll be two different articles
okay.
that we agreed on.
Yeah.
And the change just didn't make it into the workflow in time. But we know it's a change that we have to make.
What, sir? What are we on, Roku?
What was that?
Something popped out here from the side. I don't know.
I thought we got rid of that Zoom thing.
Right.
It wasn't Zoom bot.
Anybody,
Is that
nobody online.
Okay.
Hmm?
Is that Linda?
Is that,
Linda's there.
oh. So anybody have questions, comments, anything else? Okay, let's move on to the next article. Public hearing is closed, and now we're going to talk about R5 district. And Dan, this was the one you worked on?
It's mine, and I added those for housing reasons. I said, right now, you can only have one family dwellings. And I said, well, why not 2 or 3 family dwellings on a 5 acre lot? Just putting it out there. It's not a hill I'm gonna die on, Sealy. But at some point in time, the state of New Hampshire is going to come up and say, where are you gonna put your workforce housing? Because you have to have workforce housing by law now. And my feeling was, in order to build, it has to be in your largest district. Route 5 district is your largest district
No,
in order to do work.
I didn't find that. You
Well-
told me that was a law before. That the
That's
largest.
all I
area
know.
you have
That's
to
what the
put it in.
consultant told us, is you have to have workforce housing in your town, in your largest district.
But this whole town that, you know,
I agree with Sally. I
Yeah.
went through the literature on workforce
Okay.
housing, the RSA's, the planning office, the New Hampshire Planning Office, brochures,
Right.
documents. And what I was reading was you cannot prohibit.
Prohibit.
It's nothing about you have to, create it yourself.
Well, no, but you
You
have,
can't tell a developer no,
no,
if he comes in with a project.
but you can't have you cannot have a project. You have to have portions in town where workforce housing is available.
Well, that's gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
We've said that for 20 years and it hasn't happened.
There's a lot of history to why it hasn't
Well,
happened.
I know. I said it's not a hill I'm gonna die on, Sealy.
Well,
I put it in there to see what people thought.
This is gonna get more.
And I'm gonna
people at the Cal-
And I would like to see the public vote on it.
Great.
Go ahead.
So Dan, I'll tell you upfront, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
For a number of different.
Right.
Now, a couple of questions. If we combine this with the first, potential amendment that we talked about, can I have an ADU for each of
No.
these?
No, you can only have
Because
one.
three family is
Not a single thing.
not, a single family.
Right.
And a three, you can't add an ADU to a three family.
Right.
You could add an
Let me-
ADU
let
to
me-
two family.
Yeah, let me push back on that a bit. Could I add 2 ADUs to a 3-family?
No,
No,
it's only on single family units.
The definition of an ADU, a residential living unit that is within, attached to, or detached from a single
Single
family
family.
dwelling.
So no ADU.
So no ADUs other than,
Right.
single family. That's part of the purpose of the definition.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to, if you want to follow this through to its illogical conclusion, which we normally do, you could have a 3-family, you could actually have it out in Route 5. But the 2 ADUs could only be 1,200 square feet. I could build a building that had a principal building
Yeah.
and 2 ADUs, both attached.
Yeah.
It could be a 3-family, basically.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Regardless of.
And the garages do not count as contingent use. So you could have basically three garages off of the main unit and 2 1,200 square foot ADUs.
So regardless of the answer that I just
Right.
got, I'm still not in favor
Yeah,
of it. Because
that's okay.
I feel as though our R5 is something that we should be disturbing. I think.
Yeah.
It's, some people snicker when you talk about the rural nature of the town and wanting to be in that. I don't. It's one of the reasons that I moved here, the reason that a lot of other people moved here. And if we're going to protect this town, I think we need to start with R5.
Okay.
Environmental.
Yeah.
Rural characters.
Thank you. To anticipate what the state is going to do and try to jump through that hoop before they make the hoop for us to jump through, seems a little premature to me.
Okay,
I would agree.
yeah.
Okay, Lindsay.
Yeah, so Lindsay Smith, I do think that, the master plan has been invoked a couple of times tonight. I was hoping we were gonna get to it.
Right.
The reason I was here. But anyways, I do think that the master plan says both, that we need to build housing, says that we need to build housing and we need to do it where there's infrastructure. But we also want to preserve our rural spaces.
Yeah.
And so, that the ADUs and all that stuff help that one piece, protecting R5 helps the other piece. So there's that balance.
Sure.
I think it's an interesting question for sure.
Let's hear from Tim and then Sharon. All right, Sharon.
My experience in this town, when people vote, there's all sorts of controversy that we don't need to go into about SB2, how many people show up to vote, how many people show up for the deliberative sessions, et cetera. I think this is a very important matter for people to be informed about. when they vote. But I also think what happens is I think people tend to vote favorably for things that don't impact them. You know, in cost, in their lifestyle, what have you.
Yeah.
And I fear that people aren't really gonna understand if they vote for this, increasing the density in the rural 5 district, what that could bring. And there again, once developers come in and buy up land and make proposals and think about how they can, you know, they're squeezing 300 units on top of a major, I call it a major wetland for Enfield. And we don't need to go there. But the fact is, they'll take any piece of property they can and develop it to the outside max. So if we can do anything tonight, it's to preserve R5 as it is without adding additional accessory separate buildings and multifamily housing.
Okay. Thank you for the comment. Jim?
Should be pointed out, all zoning amendments are voted by official ballots. This doesn't come up at town meetings or. But what I wanted to point out, I'm hearing the R5 concerns. But what I want to suggest to you is not directly about this, but it's closely related. Right here, I think is a poster child for why R5, the current regulations for R5 don't work. Each one of these lots are at least 5 acres in size. So obviously here, some years ago, this large lot was subdivided into 5 acres. That's what that looks like. Somehow, when we write new zoning regulations about the rural district, we got to figure out how someone can subdivide their property and not end up with this. You probably have a large tract of forest back here, as for an example. And you've got, I'm guessing, 10 different owners to decide how to manage that forest. You probably got wildlife corridor that runs through there. And you got 10 different owners deciding on what they want to do with their land back there. That does not seem to, for me, that does not meet the goals of the master plan. And I don't know how to solve that problem. I wish I did, but I don't know what the magic.
Is that Walter
Regulations.
Payne's property?
It's,
I don't-
it's Palmer Road.
On the road, but it's
It's
not.
I
Palmer
know,
Road.
but Walter Payne lived at the end.
Yes, at the end of it.
And he preserved a lot of land.
Right.
So is that what you're talking about?
It could be.
Palmer Road ended up stripped. They basically subdivided into strips. They're about 200 feet wide and 5 acres deep. Yeah. Yeah.
Tim, I will say that, some towns will work with what's called shape factor, which is
Right.
basically dictating the shape of a lot. That
Right.
may be a
Yeah,
solution there.
whatever, we need to talk about all those little tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree that we should have that
Yeah.
conversation, but how would this in any way, shape, or form address that?
It does.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Mr. Miller?
I live in an R5 district and I guess I'll share my perspective. The R5 districts are areas where there's some water, some sewer, some playgrounds, some recreational areas. I can't have my kids ride the bus because the bus comes at 6:45 AM and I can't expect my 5-year-old to sit on the bus for an hour and 15 minutes each way to school and back. So there aren't really access to services in the R5 district like there are in other parts of town and in the downtown area. So my sense is that going to 3-family by right in the R5 district is probably a step too far. you know, I can see a case to be made potentially for a duplex, you know, type situation in certain parts of the R5 district, but, you know, the R5, it's just so, you know, many of the R5 district, I live on Methodist Hill Road, it's completely disconnected from the rest of town. And, you know, it would be hard with the topography and the access to any sort of municipal infrastructure, lack of access to any sort of municipal infrastructure, to imagine 3-family houses by right, you know, happening up that road. And I think that probably would be a similar situation, you know, in the other parts of the community. So I think, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to pare this one back a little bit, and particularly maybe strike the 3-family by right, in the R5. It's just my personal opinion as an outsider, not having participated in these discussions.
Started out with 4.
I did, and I pulled the 4 out.
Yeah.
I knew that wasn't gonna fly with anybody, and I wanted to make sure it wouldn't fly. But 3, I mean, you know, I went down to 3. I'll tell you why, because workforce housing is based on $340,000 per unit. You can't build for $340,000 with a single family home. Just can't do it. The infrastructure cost is too much for the driveways and, you know, a separate septic system and all of that. I mean, the land's gonna be 100,000 minimum. You're gonna have 35 or 40,000 in the septic system. You gotta still do a well, and you still gotta do a driveway. Yeah. And that's the Grafton County number. $340,000 for a single family, for a unit with 2 bedrooms.
David,
And I'm just reflecting on the current Laramie Farms proposal. The developers make no qualms about saying that this is not,
Oh, I agree.
not workforce housing.
Yeah.
They have no intention to make it that.
Right.
we know that.
And they're the deep pockets around.
Yeah.
So, you know, we may aspire to workforce housing, but I'm not sure we can create it.
We may not be able to create it, but the way it's written is it has to be made available. It has to be available, but a majority of the land.
Yeah, so a municipality that adopts land use ordinances and regulations shall allow workforce housing to be located in a majority, but not necessarily all, of the land area that is zoned to permit residential uses within the municipality. Such a municipality shall have the discretion to determine what land areas are appropriate to meet this obligation. This obligation to be satisfied, may be satisfied by the adoption of inclusionary zoning as defined in RSA 674:21. And then of interest here is 4A, where it says, this paragraph shall not be construed to require a municipality to allow for the development of multifamily housing in a majority of its land zoned to permit residential uses. And there's a few other things too, but those are sort of the ones that are really relevant to this conversation.
What RSA is that?
674:59, workforce housing opportunities.
Okay.
Sharon?
Okay, I think of workforce housing and I think of people that may have a need for public transportation perhaps to get to work or doctor,
Yep.
whatever.
Right.
So couldn't you shift thinking? I mean, we were talking before about the business district, commercial business. I don't know what that district is now going to be called as one, but whatever that one district will be, you talked about businesses having some housing.
Yeah.
So it seems to me if you have to identify where workforce housing could be, would be there, and that's why. I mean, public transportation, 1/4 acre lots, so greater density, so on and so forth. And then you're preserving your more rural character areas.
I agree with that goal. It seems like, isn't there also a requirement somewhere in the RSA's that has to be workforce housing has to be possible or encouraged, whatever the wording is, in the largest.
Majority of land use
Yeah, it has to be allowed.
has to
So it
be
doesn't have to
allowed,
be encouraged, doesn't have to be.
but it has to be allowed.
In the largest district.
No, no, no.
No,
No,
In the
no.
majority of the area. So here's what.
Majority of the land use of the town,
Majority, but not necessarily all of the land area
right?
that is zoned to permit residential uses.
Which means you back out all the conservation.
But conservation, we don't allow residential, that area doesn't count. The rest of the area counts. And the majority of the area. So it doesn't even necessarily have to follow the zoning district.
No,
it doesn't.
Lines.
No.
You could theoretically do an overlay
right.
of the areas of town that you want.
And you could say this workforce housing is allowed in these areas.
Well, you'd have to have some
Right.
zoning, because
Right.
anyone can build low-cost housing if they choose to.
I think I saw Sharon's hand first and then Sealy.
I just have a question.
Okay, Sealy.
I wanted to ask, Rob. Since you got the, one of the 18 people who got that, award for, aren't you gonna get grant money from
We're
that?
eligible. We're
Are you?
eligible. We're eligible for grant money.
Okay,
That's
so why
specific area.
can't we work on having something built in town with that money, even buying a land for workforce housing?
I don't think the town is in the business of
You don't
developing.
think what?
We don't do the developments ourselves.
No, we get somebody to do it, oh, who does that, the trust thing?
Is that grant,
Fine.
are those
Choice buying.
grants for
It would be
construction?
Ideal,
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't either.
and then they can be in town, and they can be on transportation, they could walk to the store, they could, because that's workforce housing, I mean, that will save money.
There is a bill, if it goes through, that would, set up, I think, a $50 million revolving fund for construction, either grants or loans. And, we'll know about that in 6 months or so.
If the town manager will look at that.
It's just putting it out on the table that at some point, we gotta figure a way of having workforce housing in this town. Cause right now,
Well, you're doing it, you gotta,
right,
We have more than we think, because
we probably do.
our existing housing stock counts towards
Right.
Yeah,
affordable housing numbers. And we have a substantial amount of housing that
That's
is
it.
underneath that price
340.
threshold. So
Yeah.
Enfield has a substantial amount of what is defined as workforce housing today.
Right.
And we do allow it in these areas today. There's nothing preventing somebody from
Right.
building it. I mean, the
Right.
costs.
The
are
cost is.
costs.
the
Town is
cost
not
is the
preventing that.
But we're not, the
Right.
town zoning is not preventing them
right,
from doing that.
right. It's the economics that
Correct.
discourage it.
Right, which the
Right.
town can't really do anything about the economics
No, we
of
can't.
how much 2x4s cost.
Right.
Well, there is a, I think what this the state law is getting at is that
Yeah.
you don't want to design your zoning ordinance in a way that
Prevents it.
makes it impossible to
Right.
build a
Right,
cost-effective home.
Right.
So that's why 1 to 1/4 acre zoning, for instance,
Right.
and the additional ADUs.
Right.
Whatever we do with the new village district we're talking about writing should enable someone to come in and do a cost-effective building that could then have units that sell at a
Right.
lower rate.
right.
I think that's only gonna work though, when we finally reach a level of inventory in town where we have, the right percentage of vacant properties. That's gonna take many years.
Well, the other thing is there are tools that we can implement, such as density bonuses, stuff like that, which would make it financially attractive for developers to have a certain percentage of a development be workforce or affordable.
we're getting up way off topic,
Right.
the warrant
Yeah.
article.
We sure.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the clock and so.
Okay, so let's close that public hearing and work our way backwards through these articles. I would suggest that we drop the proposed amendment for Route 5.
For thought.
No, for, not Route 5, for R5.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Dan's not gonna die.
I'm not gonna die on that hill.
Dropping the whole thing or just the 3 families?
Just drop.
I, three family?
Yeah,
Okay.
we got consensus on that.
Will we have consensus on
Okay.
duplexes? Well, which is smaller than being able to do a single family and 2
Well,
ADUs.
it would give them the choice
It gives
of
them the
doing
choice.
two
ADUs
units
or a
of the size
duplex.
they want, or
Or a
two
duplex.
ADUs with size limits. That's,
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so we're going to X 3 family.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, we
want to vote on that?
Oh yeah, we should vote on
Let's
that.
vote on that.
Okay. So,
Let's
somebody
close-
want,
let's
somebody
close
wanna
the
make
entire
a,
public hearing.
somebody, okay, well, entire public hearing is closed. And the board is going to deliberate. Guys can watch. You can't take part.
To do a roll call, it's Linda.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will. All right, so I need a motion.
I make a motion, we accept the amended article on R5 district.
And the
Removing
amendment, the
three
amendment
family.
is to
Removing 3 family.
delete 3 family.
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. We'll do roll call vote, starting with Linda.
Aye.
Linda is aye.
Eric,
Dan,
Aye.
Bill? Wait a second. Are we down somebody? No, Linda's here.
By
Okay,
default, we have one less person because Brad is no longer here.
that's right.
We're short
So
one.
Kurt, you are a voting member on
Okay.
this. Tim, how do you vote?
Aye.
Kurt?
We voting on the amendments or the warrant article?
We are voting on the amendment, which is to delete 3 family dwellings from the R5 proposed amendment.
Actually, no. Dan made a motion,
To accept the amended motion, to accept the amended article.
accepted that.
Yeah.
We've already,
We're voting on,
We're voting on whether to accept the amendment.
no,
No,
we're voting on, well,
the amendment to the amendment
We're voting on the amended article.
the amended article.
to delete.
No, we're voting, it's the amended article. We've removed 2 words, 3 family.
Right.
We are voting on, this is what the article is going to be.
call it amendment number 4.
Right, whatever you want.
Okay,
So voting, if we're voting on the warrant article as presented, that will be presented,
Yes,
I am voting no.
okay.
so if I can interpret your vote, you are in favor of the 3 family?
No,
No, he's not in favor of having duplexes.
I'm not in favor of the warrant article, period.
Okay,
Okay, fine.
No matter how you write it, I'm not in favor of it.
All right,
good.
I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
So the vote is, how many yeas? 6 nays, 6 yeas and 1 nay. Okay. Next is the articles concerning the community business district being expanded to eliminate the Route 4 district and the minimum lot size of community district to be reduced to a 1/4 acre where sewer is possible.
Well, that's the topic. I make a
Right, we're gonna
motion,
have 2 warrant
That we
articles.
separate.
Yeah, we're gonna separate them.
I make a motion that we advance article, call this one 3, I guess.
I just the title.
Yeah, I just don't want to read this thing. The Article 3, Provision 1.
Right.
To town meeting.
We advance number 1 to town meeting.
Yes,
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, let's go the other way around the table. Kurt,
Yes.
Yes.
Tim is a yes,
Yes.
Bill is a yes,
Yes,
Dan is a yes,
Eric, yes.
Linda,
Yes,
and I vote yes. So we shall advance this one, the number 1 part. And now we go to number 2, which is the quarter acre part
Make a
of it.
motion that we advance amendment, call it 3A. Shall the minimum lot size of community business district reduce a quarter acre of our connection to municipal sewer is possible.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded, roll call vote. Start with Linda. Are you keeping up with us, Linda?
yes, I am. Well, I don't
back.
see the purpose of the, maybe I'll abstain because I don't see the purpose of the quarter acre on Route 4. Because Route 4 is supposed to have, if it's community business, it's set back a number of feet.
Eric.
So
Abstain.
I'm going to abstain.
All right, Eric,
Eric, yes.
Dan,
yes,
Point of information though,
Yes.
if the first section written here, number 1, does not pass.
Yep.
Then the second section still apply.
yes,
What's
Yes.
left of
to
the,
the existing community
Existing
business
DB.
district.
Because there clearly is residential along that stretch.
that's
right.
right.
Your vote,
No.
Yes.
Kurt,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, both of those get advanced. Parking. Do I have a motion from somebody? On the parking?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we advance the amended parking and loading article.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Kurt,
Yes.
Tim,
Tim, and that parentheses H would be included in this.
Yeah,
yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Dan,
yes,
Derek, Linda,
Yes,
and I vote yes. And finally, the ADU amendment. Somebody care to make a motion?
I move we advance the ADU amendment as written.
Motion made, do I hear a second?
That's like,
Made and seconded. Linda, how do you vote?
yes,
Eric,
Yes.
yes,
Bill?
Yes.
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 And I vote yes. So, all of these get advanced to town meeting. Next on the agenda, Eric, the select board report.
We have not met since our last meeting, so I have nothing new to report.
Okay. Rob. Elevator speech or
Very
elevator
much, yeah.
report.
I'll just tell you, let's see, there's a move happening downtown with the, Whitney Hall complex. They're moving into the library, this week, and next week will be, town offices. Moving from La Salette back to Whitney Hall, coming coming close to completion, and I think they're very excited, but it's also a very high level of stress for a lot of people for the move. It's a lot of work and boxes of stuff, so that's happening. We enjoyed some nice time off during the holidays. We stay busy with stuff that you guys have been talking about tonight, so I guess I'll just leave it at that. If anybody has any questions, fire away.
Any questions for Rob?
Did we have the ZBA member resign? Or did I just mishear that? Okay, never mind.
Okay, legislative report. We,
Elevator speech.
elevator
Right.
speech. We have our first full session on the 9th of February. So the House has not had an opportunity to decide anything yet. There are, I think, over 1,000 bills that we will have to deal with. Committees started working and having public hearings this week. And at our next meeting, I will report on what I know of municipal and county government and also the new housing committee, tell you what they're up to. That's the legislative report.
Just to put it in perspective, I went to school board last night. There's 250 bills related to education this year.
What did the business?
And I am glad that I am nowhere near the education committee. Because they've got a lot on their plate. They divided it into 3 different subcommittees. One for policy, one for finance, and one for law. So they have their plates full. And that is all that I have to say about the legislature. I am going to move that we skip over the minutes.
Yeah.
And because the hour is late. And go on to the master plan phase 2 adoption discussions. Lindsay, you're smiling. Are you happy with it?
We got there, yeah,
Yes.
good.
Good. Are there any comments from the public on our final draft of the master plan, which has been on the website for quite a while, a few weeks anyhow?
Yes, I would,
Yeah,
this is,
who's talking?
excuse me, this is Joellen.
Yep.
Okay, there were just 2 minor corrections that still needed to be made. One was a spelling error of Eversource on page 91. And there's a chart on page 90, excuse me, that's page 90. And on page 91, the chart had some additional information added, but the chart needs to be more consistent in terms of the way it's laid out.
Okay, those are good changes. They are not substantive changes. And we will do another round of editing and get that information corrected. So somebody want to make a motion?
Go ahead.
Okay,
I didn't know what to do with this, because I reviewed this thoroughly. I think I've got probably 3 dozen, mostly grammatical, punctuation kind of issues to suggest, which sounds like could be done anytime. There were some sections though that I'm not really that happy with, particularly the town facilities and services section. I think that really is disjointed. I'm not sure that I could really. I just couldn't vote for the way this thing is put together, particularly that section. I've just got a number of issues, and if we had more time, I would go through those one by one, but, I don't know what to do at this point.
How about if we approve by chapter?
Or, can I say something?
Lindsay?
So we no longer have the consultants. So that's done. So some of the issues like spelling changes and things, if we have the raw data, we might be able to do that. But unless something is so egregiously wrong, the information that's in there has been discussed, it's been over and over at meetings. There was time for all of that. And unless we've got something completely egregiously wrong, and which nothing's come up in meetings. There's some people who don't like this sentence. There's some people who don't like this thing. You're not supposed to like it all. You're not supposed to, it's not to appeal to everybody and it's not a promotional document. So my suggestion is that we pass this because we can't go back and rework it. We don't have consultants anymore. The committee has done its job. It's gonna be up for reworking again in 8 years by this time. And so unless there's something like we decided that we're gonna turn Mascoma into a water park, and, I don't know, just like things that were really out of line, but everything that's in there went along with what we heard from many, many different sources in many different ways. So if it's not reading right or something, like if there's a lot of grammatical errors, I think we can change that because we have access to the raw document. But my hope is that it'll get passed. At this point in time, it should be passed. This is like, we would not have presented it if it wasn't in the shape that it's going to be in.
I would have to say that I agree with my co-chair. We pretty much beat it to death.
Right. I think we're not looking for new information, like
Right.
the time and place where all that should have been
And,
presented. And so,
and we strive for 100% perfection. Don't always get there. And I think it's time, as Lindsay said, unless there's really crazy stuff, which we are not aware of, and we should have been made aware of it a month or 2 months ago, because we've been going over final drafts. It's at least, November or October?
but chapter by chapter, so there've been lots of things.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you're defending your thesis. You show up to your thesis meeting and it's wrong, then you did something wrong in the.
The whole process is wrong.
But grammatical stuff, yeah, let's get those in and we can deal with that.
In my case, we got, the board has to approve this master plan.
Okay.
And, that's the first I've seen it. So, in the last couple of weeks.
It's been out there for a long
Yeah,
time.
Yeah.
but the board has not been discussing it as a board. That's.
We discussed it.
Not
last
actual,
month.
not the final chapters. I believe this is like the first,
I may be getting my meetings confused, but I am reasonably certain that the board, we held our public hearing on the master plan at our last meeting, in December.
Which was
And-
the first time that we were presented with a copy of this thing. I mean, you got finished and posted on the website like the day before.
Well, though, I mean, the edits that have been made in the last month or 2 months have been relatively minor edits. And if you didn't take the time to read it, it's on you, Tim. I'm sorry.
Well, and then I don't quite understand most plans, most documents that the board writes, I don't, what's the problem with editing words? Making changes or maybe a paragraph's in the wrong place or something like that. Yeah, I don't quite get what we need.
And if you have those kinds of changes, like, but what, like, that's what, those need to be articulated, and if those are grammatical kinds of things. Those are not substantial, like, they're not, the ideas are not wrong. What's being presented, if it's, I don't like this order, the sentence reads weird, then that's, that's a editing.
Right, but if
situation.
we adopt it as printed, how can we go back and say, oh, we're gonna change this, this, and this?
Or you just go back and make the recommended changes, and say, okay, we're gonna.
Which means
we're gonna
another
amend our
hearing,
master plan in
another,
this way.
but that's
Should
just,
be another
it's the
hearing.
thing. No, it's another hearing with the process of Tim saying,
They're not
these are
substantial.
the changes that I believe should be made. So,
Are the
I don't
ideas?
understand why we need a consultant to make a wording change.
No, we
We
don't.
don't.
But, is it a wording change? Is it an idea change?
I mean, if your comments are, a spelling error or grammatical error, or something like that, those are not substantial changes, and I think we can, adopt it tonight with the changes that you outlined.
After 9, I have marked up pages all over the place here. I just, it's too late to, I think tonight, to try to deal with it.
Make a motion to table it.
Phyllis made a motion to table. Do I
didn't
have a
make
second?
motion. I'm saying he
Oh,
wants to delay it. I'm
Okay,
making a motion to approve tonight.
okay, Tim,
Well-
Dan, what do you have to say?
I was going to say, is there only one chapter that you've got an issue with, Tim? Substantive issue?
Yeah, the substantive stuff is in the facilities
Okay,
chapter.
so can we approve the other 4?
No, because it's all one document, so technically you have to approve the master plan. You would even be adopting the first 5 chapters again. So I think that's, if I understand right from when we did the first 5 chapters.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's all one document, even though we did 5 chapters already, we're adopting the master plan, so it's chapters 1 through 10.
our next meeting's in 2 weeks. More or less,
Next week,
okay.
next week.
Can we just have this on the top of the agenda? We're not, doesn't sound like we're gonna have a second meeting for zoning changes.
No.
So that's off the table.
Could I make a suggestion? So I work with the master plan as well with Dave and Nancy. Tim, I like everything that you do, but I would say the time for substantive changes at this point, that ship has kind of sailed. You're gonna either have to approve or not approve. No more substantive changes. Excuse me, so let me finish. The time for fine sanding at this point, that's still available. And we can change some wording, change some punctuation, but anything else I say it's too late.
I agree with Dan.
I have a motion to approve it tonight.
I'll say.
Are you making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
And I heard
I'll second.
Eric second it. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We will vote, starting with Linda. The motion is to accept the entire master plan, including the 5 new chapters. Linda, how do you vote?
And also allowing the punctuation and spelling corrections?
Yes,
Okay. That's acceptable?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Linda votes yes. Eric?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Bill? Tim?
Sure, yes.
And Kurt?
Voting no,
And I vote yes.
should have had the opportunity.
The master plan is accepted, approved, and we will make non-substantive changes as soon as we can. And Tim, if you can get me a list or you want to meet, we can figure out what those changes are and we can get them made ASAP.
too that Joellen, she also sent an email, so we've got a couple of things, we needed to get the raw stuff data from the consultants.
Just to throw it out there, you can change it at any point in time. You can change anything at any point.
We just readopt.
We just readopt.
Yeah,
It means we'd have to have a public hearing, but we could readopt
But I
with the
think if
changes.
it's
And that way, everything else is clean.
Yeah.
It's a living document. We should look at it every year.
Right.
And go through.
Look at it every meeting.
Well, not-
We're gonna talk about it every meeting, every chapter.
okay, folks, it's 25 after 9. Old business, hot grant. We got approved for $37,300 and some change, which is everything we asked for plus the optional.
Wow.
So, at our next meeting, we will discuss scope of work, and we will discuss which of the consultants we want to enter into a contract with.
Are they all aware of the new number?
They are aware of the new number. Rob, have you received comments back from regional planning? I think they were the ones that had not responded.
She sent an email. Yep.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
So they're all interested still. in
Okay.
37.
Good. We will deal with that at our next meeting.
Well, how are we gonna? We're gonna do that.
What do you mean, how are we gonna do that? We're gonna,
We're gonna ask each of them to provide a news proposal.
No.
Based on the.
no, we're gonna decide amongst us which of the contractors we wanna hire. My personal preference is that we add resilience back into the mix, because I think there are advantages to having them, and we're gonna discuss it. And we are also gonna, we'll do pros and cons of any contractor that is interested. And we'll do that next week. New business, you ready, new business?
We're gonna have a meeting next week?
Week from
Rather than
today.
the Fifth Wednesday?
Yeah, we're back on our regular schedule.
Okay.
Good. Comments from the public?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sealy. Next meeting on the 22nd. Not on the 29th. We're leaving the minutes for our next meeting because it's late,
That's the whole thing.
and I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I refuse to second.
A second.
All right. Roll call vote. Linda?
Yes.
Linda wants to get out of here.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes, yes.
Tim? Kurt?
Yes.
I vote yes. Meeting adjourned at 9:28. Thank you for staying, everybody. Members of the public, thank you very much for your comments. They are appreciated.
Yeah. 5 Wednesdays.
Yeah.
So there. It's 5 Wednesdays.
Some months are just longer than others.
I know.